And welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you guys are joining us from. I am Nikhil Aparajit. I'm your host for the day, and I bring forward to you this next workshop on how to build a decentralized app or a DApp or a secure DApp using Arcana. And for that, we have Mayur here with us today. So, Mayur, without any further ado, all over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure being here and talking about what we're doing at Arcana to all the lovely folk participating in your hackathon. This is a wonderful hackathon that you guys are doing. And I think the response to the hackathon speaks for itself. So yeah, I'll jump right into it. So share my screen. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about how you can build like secure but still a rich category of apps using Arcana. And by rich, I mean anything that you potentially see in Web 2, and how those are now possible in Web 3, thanks to some of the things that we are doing. And of course, a bunch of things that other people are also doing. By way of introduction, I'm Mayur. I'm the founder and CEO of Arcana. And, at Arcana, we've been basically working on various things, which I'll talk about very soon. I've personally been in this space for the last 5 years now. And been working on Arcana and affiliated ideas for the past 3 years. We've had multiple pivots, as you can imagine, but yeah, finally I think we've arrived at what we believe is the right sort of positioning for Arcana, which I think will benefit not only devs but end users also. So yeah, how do you build rich apps with Arcana, right? So why should someone like Arcana even exist, right? So let's just get a lay of the land very quickly. In general, our hypothesis is that like the compute, which is essentially like an updation of and storage of state on blockchains, that entire sort of ecosystem has matured wonderfully well. I mean, I remember back in 2018, 2019, where I think the number one topic of discussion was that how Ethereum is so slow, could never scale to the amounts that are required by, a rich class of applications in general. And, mass adoption would simply not be possible on something like Ethereum. But I think most of those conversations are pretty much moot today because of the rich L2 and sidechain sort of ecosystems that have developed on top of Ethereum. And also just, more throughput focused layer ones like Solana, Near, etc. I think with the future, we're going to have like ZK rollups also. And I think, in general, we're going to like perhaps surpass whatever we see in Web 2 by way of just computation, which is fantastic. But I think in general, like the rest of the tooling and infra in the space has really not matured at the same level. By that, I mean that, there's the tooling and infrastructure around like this user onboarding, right, is probably, it's pretty terrible at the moment. I mean, if you're looking at building like a DApp in the space, but if the user's first point of contact with your DApp is like Connect Wallet, and I can tell you outside of our little Web3 bubble that we live in, majority of people have no concept of what a wallet is, what private keys are, etc., etc. And then you end up sort of like not only like confusing the user, but also like making them immediately shift context from your DApp, which they have probably arrived with great difficulty after finding you or whatever. And then you send them off to like a wallet website where they now have to do a series of steps. And by the time they're done with those steps, they probably don't even remember where they were, right? In general, like I think data storage, obviously blockchains, you can't store a lot of data, which is why you have to store them off chain. And we currently have very primitive tooling in general, right? Like we have IPFS, Filecoin, Arweave, all of these sorts of things. but you could never compare these to like data stores that you have in Web 2, right? The rich classification of them, and the immense amount of tooling that you get around like primitive stores like S3, etc., is quite remarkable when you compare Web 3 to Web 2. And I think in general, access control, right? So right now, most people, when they try and build a Web3 dApp, whether it's at a hackathon or anywhere else, probably just end up using IPFS because it's free. But the point of that is that you're basically pushing data to a store which anyone can access without you even like having any modicum of control over who gets to access and who doesn't, right? Anyone with an internet connection can always go to almost any CID on IPFS and basically download the data and see what it is. So how do you like control access? So there's no real like tooling around these areas. And many, many more such things just exist in terms of like, a lack of maturity in that ecosystem. So this is why essentially Arcana exists. And what Arcana aims to be is like the Firebase of Web3. A lot of you might not know what Firebase is. So Firebase was basically at one point in time, the go-to place for devs if they wanted to go 0 to 1 with their application. It provided basically all the fundamental things that you need to kind of build, host, track data on apps, etc. And it was so much so that Google saw them as competition and felt like they needed to kind of buy them, and then Google acquired Firebase. But it is still remembered as one of those places where you can actually go and have like the exact set of toolkit that you need to be able to kind of go from 0 to 1 on your app. So that's what Arcana aims to be. So to start out with, we have 3 services in the Arcana stack. The first is Arcana Auth, where we are addressing the user onboarding issue. How we do this is we basically allow devs to kind of authenticate users using, Web 2 sort of mechanisms like social OAuth, like perhaps Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, etc. And you could also do like passwordless mechanisms where you just put an email and you say, send me a link, and you click the link and you verify it yourself. We do support wallet, like connect wallet scenarios also. But if you were to use any sort of like typical Web 2 mechanisms, then we end up giving that user a non-custodial private key. And this is crucial because this is now user onboarding. Because now once the user has access to a non-custodial private key, which basically means that the platform is giving this private key does not have access to this private key themselves, right? So it's not like a centralized exchange where it's a custodial platform. But it's not self-custody either, where the user has to manage keys or seed phrases and remember passwords and all those sorts of things. They simply use one of these mechanisms, and once they authenticate, they get a private key. And with this private key, now you probably have like a complete crypto noob interacting with your dApp and being able to essentially have access to a wallet on a particular chain, sign transactions to smart contracts on that chain, and also encrypt data. So this in general is quite powerful. So this is Arcana Auth. The next piece is Arcana Store. Basically, an authenticated user can now encrypt and store data on a distributed network of nodes. And what we ensure with Arcana Store is that you can basically allow for accessing and storing of data with end-to-end encryption. This is where the high security of Arcana comes. We just believe that all data should ideally be encrypted by default. This is to make sure that people, especially platforms, are not reading data that you're storing. So this is what Arcana Store does. And finally, Arcana Access basically makes sure that any data that is stored, can the user or maybe the dApp that you're using can decide who gets access to this data under what conditions, right? So right now, in the version of Arcana that we have, you can share almost anything with any address on any EVM compatible chain. And there is much more in the pipeline, which we will talk about later in this presentation. So what are the use cases that we're seeing, right? So we're seeing a bunch of NFT related use cases where we're basically saying that if you use Arcana and launch an NFT marketplace, then you can ensure that only the NFT holder has access to the underlying asset which has been minted. Now, that could be an image, a video, a document, an audio, whatever it may be. But this basically guarantees that only the NFT holder gets access to the underlying asset. So you don't have like right click and save sort of issues. And then games, of course, majority of gamers are not crypto native. There's also a general backlash against NFTs in games amongst a lot of the gaming community. But fundamentally, if there are good games that will get built in the Web3 space, which I'm fairly confident of, onboarding gamers is going to be super important. So, which is where our auth basically gets used quite a bit. And then DAOs, of course, if you want to start growing a community and go beyond just the regular crypto know-it-alls or the bots and things like that, then Arcana Auth again starts to become quite important. And with Arcana Access, you can actually start like token gating DAOs. Wallets, of course, and social. We believe a lot of social sort of experiences are going to kind of come up in the near future. And then that's where the entire Arcana stack fits in well, right? So if you imagine like a Twitter where the user actually owns and controls all of the data that they're posting and decides who gets access and who doesn't, then this is something that Arcana enables with the current stack that we have. And finally, we've architected Arcana in a way where you can actually use it in Web 2. Right? We've abstracted away most things for the developer, and the developer has full optionality to kind of show user a wallet and the signing of transaction sort of experiences, or just hide that all away and just use it for encrypting and decrypting data. So yeah, let me quickly jump into like a demo here. And we'll show you all the things that Arcana can do from scratch, pretty much. All right, so I have a little demo account set up here. So what you need to do as a developer is just go to the Arcana dashboard. And in the current version of the dashboard, you can actually sign up with any of these. I'm just going to go proceed with Google. I have a little test account that I made here. I'm going to use that to sign up. Remember, I'm the developer of an application who wants to integrate with Arcana. Okay. So I'm first met with the screen where I say I want to create like a new app. What is the name of my app? I'm just going to say this is Buidl for Web3 demo. And I have to choose the storage region. I'll just continue with Asia. Let's create. So now my first instance of the app is created. So now, first you'll see there's a bunch of configuration that I can do. There's some general config, there's authentication, store access. I can basically pick and choose the things that I want to use, right? So initially there's just some basic like sort of branding configuration. I want to be able to, yeah. So I'm going to use, say, the light mode of the wallet. And this is the logo mark. I just have Twitter logos here set up. Okay, and then I hit save. So all of this configuration eventually just goes to a smart contract and updates the configuration there. And so let's set up some auth. So I want to set up Google here. So to be able to kind of set up Google for my app, I need to, I can go here, check out like the documentation around it. Essentially, you need to get the client ready for your Google Auth credentials. So I'll go here. I did have like a redirect URI. Guys who have set up like Google Auth for their apps will already be quite familiar. I just need to copy my redirect URI. I come here. I already have an app created here. I'm just going to use that. So I come here. I just need to say what is the redirect URI that I want to use. And I'll This is the redirect URI for my app. I'll hit save, and then I'm going to just copy this client ID, go back to the dashboard. I want to set up Google, so I'll paste the client key over here. And I also want to do passwordless authentication, which is basically, send a link and you do it. So I come here and I say the redirect URI is this, and I want to enable UI mode for the wallet, where I want to use light mode. So it gives you an idea of what that looks like. So I've done all the setup I need for my auth right now. As soon as this is done, there's not any more setup that I really need to do at the moment. So as soon as this is done, yep, we're good. I'm just going to go back here. And as you can see, like this app currently has one user. That's basically what I use to kind of create this account. No files added, no storage used, no bandwidth used. This is app ID. I just need to copy that. And let me pull up. I already have like an app coded up here. It's a simple app. You guys will see it soon. But basically, these are I've already integrated the Arcana SDKs, the two SDKs, which is basically the auth SDK and the storage SDK. I've already done that. I just need to come to my local environment, and I just need to update this app ID to this, save that, and we're pretty much done. So now if I do npm run dev, hopefully everything should work. And if it doesn't, please excuse me. Things like this can go wrong. All right, simple app. If you see here, it shows you like a widget here for the wallet. We've enabled like the full UI mode for it, so it shows up here. If you open it, the logos that I set up show up here. This is my wallet. I can basically log in from here, or this is a simple app that I've made where we want to kind of show all the different sort of logins. So I have set up Google, so that's the one that will actually work. So let's say Google login. I will log in as some user. Moment of truth. Yeah, so of course it didn't work. But this happens sometimes when you set up like client IDs newly. It may or may not work sometimes. Let's just try with passwordless. Passwordless is simple. I simply have to give an email ID. Link gets sent. Let me open up that email ID. Yeah. So I click the link. That's the link that was sent. And hopefully I should be logged in. Yep. So now I'm logged in. So how do I know I logged in? Obviously, I've come to a different path now. But also, if you see here, it says what's my email ID and what's the wallet address, right? So if you see, I did a simple like sort of passwordless login mechanism, but I got a wallet address. And how this works is actually a little complicated to explain technically, but what happens is that we have a distributed key generation system that generates in a distributed fashion a bunch of keys. And when a user authenticates themselves, this key is actually broken up into several small pieces and stored on different Arcana nodes. And when a user is authenticated, these pieces of the key are streamed back to the client side, where they're then put back together. So that's what makes it non-custodial, because no one server or node has access to this. And the more we decentralize that node set, the more secure it becomes. But yeah, So yeah, two parts to our demo essentially is one is of course three parts: the authentication stuff, what all can you do. So if you can see, it just shows me my my current address. I can fetch that. I can fetch my public key. This is my public key. I can fetch another account's public key. This is just an API which currently like links email to like to public key, and I can say request this public key, and I get the public key. So that's possible, and of course, different types of signatures are also possible. I can put in some data here, ABCD, and I can sign that. The wallet pops up and asks me to actually sign this. So I'll say sign it, and I get the signature, which I can then forward. Right. So now I can do all of these sorts of things from just the from integrating the auth part. Right. Now let's go ahead and check out the storage part. There's just a little. This is curious to this app, so I just have to hit approve here. But now what I can do is just simply upload files, share it with people, revoke access, and all of that should just work, right? So when I say select a file, let's pick some file here, and I'll say upload. And now what this will ask me is first is the personal signature, and this personal signature is for us to basically encrypt the file and create what a DID for this particular file. So in Arcana, what we do is we basically reference files on the Arcana network through DIDs. And this step is to kind of basically generate the DID. So we say approve. And this is to sign the transaction that actually uploads that particular file. And as you can see, all of these are just signatures, right? I'm not paying for anything. So from a user's perspective, it's just basically like a meta transaction that's happening, and the app is funding it. And you as a developer can also don't have to involve yourself with crypto or any of those sorts of things, because we basically charge you by, you can just put your credit card and pay with your credit card, and you're abstracted away from all the crypto stuff also. Yeah, so this file just got uploaded, so I can go ahead and say this is the DID that got generated. It's a unique ID for every file. And I copy this and I say this DID share with Mayur at Arcana.network. I say share. So this is going to ask me to approve. Again, this is again a signed transaction that will basically submit a share transaction to the Arcana blockchain. And when I do this, eventually one little flicker will happen. Yes. So now this file is shared with Mayur at Arcana.network. So now if I actually go and say, basically create another instance of this app, and I say Mayur at, I log in with link. And if I come here, yeah, I got this. I log in over here. This should get me through. Yep. And if I go to storage demo, close this and I say approve, you'll see that the file is shared with me over here. So if I actually had to compare, this was the file that this user uploaded. If I go across, this is the file that got shared. If I hit download, I have to approve a transaction, which is a download transaction. This is all getting logged onto the Arcana blockchain. So this will download the file, fetch the key to decrypt the file, and then go ahead and decrypt it and basically show us. So if you can see, it shows up. This is a wonderful photo of our COO. So yeah, and then just to kind of close that loop, I go back here and I say, the same file, this user, I revoke access. This will ask me to approve the revoke, just to kind of log this on chain that this file was first shared and now revoked. Now, if I go back here and I refresh this, it's gone. So this person no longer has access to this particular file, right? So yeah, this is this is like just on a very basic level what Arcana is capable of, and there's so much more that Arcana can actually do, and I'll get to that in a bit. But at this point, I would be sort of like happy to take any specific questions that you guys may have.
Guys, if you have any other questions, please make sure that you do ask. This is a very good opportunity to get your doubts cleared. So if you do have any questions, jump on into the chat and the Q&A section to ask your questions. If not, keep asking them. I think, Mayur, I'll bring them up in the end as well, if there are any towards the end.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, so yeah, we have some alpha that we'd like to drop. This is basically going to talk about, outside of the things that you just saw, what are the other things that we're working on at Arcana for an immediate release, which is basically going to happen next month. And that's going to be the final release as we run up to mainnet towards the end of the year. And of course, some of the stuff that we planned for beyond mainnet as well. So next release scheduled for October is we are going to actually do like a full-blown asynchronous distributed key generation implementation, simply called ADKG. And what I can tell you is basically that this is going to be like the most secure, most advanced, most efficient distributed key generation system, which will afford for the most secure, most advanced, non-custodial private key allocation to a user. I mean, there are a bunch of people who do similar things out there, but absolutely, none of them have this level of security and efficiency involved. And this is something that we are enabling for all of our users going forward. Of course, all of our code will be audited to kind of, substantiate our claims, but there's literally going to be no famous implementation of a full-blown ADKG, and we'll probably be one of the first ones. We're going to afford for public storage. You guys saw how data can be, access controlled, everything is encrypted, but we also want to kind of, allow all of you guys to store public files. And these files could be anything from like HTML, CSS, JSON, so you can actually host a website, or just images that you feel like that don't require encryption, decryption, and all of those sorts of things. And finally, for the access, we are actually going to make it far more powerful than just saying share with a particular address on a EVM chain. We are going to be introducing stuff like time-based access, where you can actually say share access with someone for a particular amount of time. We're going to do count-based access, where you can say share this with a particular person and allow them to access it, say 5 times. And we're going to also introduce token gating, whereby you can actually say share with anyone who has a Bored Ape or a CryptoPunk or 10 ETH or whatever you want to do. So it'll be completely customizable. You can set up the rules. You can ask your users to set up rules, or you as a developer can set up rules yourselves. And finally, we're going to introduce the concept of delegates, where users can actually give up control to the platform, that's you, the web developer, to the app developer, to be able to kind of control what happens with their assets. And while at first sight you might think that, okay, this is probably not necessary, but there are a whole bunch of use cases for this, where it actually makes sense for a server to be doing some of these things, because users are not going to be online all the time. So yeah, this is all coming up in the next release. There's a bunch of other things. You guys will see it all soon. And in the future, we're working on Arcana DB. So basically, we showed you what we can do with files. We are now going to do it with arbitrary data sets. So we're looking at building like a secure key value store. And this basically means that all the stuff that need not be in blockchain state, and this is a very important question all of you need to ask. Not everything needs to be pushed to a blockchain and blockchain state. All of that needs a place to kind of live and be queryable. Right now, I know most of us push JSON to like IPFS, but obviously that's not secure. Anyone can read it. So we are going to give you like a more secure version of it. And there's a bunch of stuff that we planned around EIP 4337. For those of you who don't know what this is this basically allows you to set up like a paymaster where you can, as a Dapp developer, sponsor transactions on behalf of a user. And for the users, the benefit is that they have their externally owned accounts separate from the accounts that actually do these transactions. And these are basically going to be on smart contract wallets. So we have a bunch of services coming out on based off of like this EIP. Those who haven't checked it out should check it out. It's a really amazing sort of EIP. So we'll have a couple more services that we add. So as you can see, what we're going to do is going to keep adding more and more sort of services to the Arcana stack. And this is how we become like, like a one-stop shop for devs where you can pick a chain and say, I want to build on Polygon. And then thereafter, you're going to say, I'm going to deploy my smart contracts there. All my business logic is going to run on these smart contracts. And Arcana is going to be the place where I want to do all the rich tooling, right? And how are we going to do this? We're going to build a lot of IP, but we're also going to kind of, work with existing protocols and kind of, integrate with them and just, allow for like quicker integrations with just a small SDK and easier payments. So that's how we intend to kind of proceed from here. So, and then finally, we also intend to offer multiple storage options. So if you don't want to store on Arcana storage for whatever reason, you want to store on tomorrow on IPFS, you're going to set up like a private IPFS gateway, and you can store on IPFS. If you want, that's if you want decentralized storage. If you want like completely centralized storage and you want to use S3, we're going to have that option available as well. So multiple storage options are going to start coming up very, very soon. So yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. These are our handles. We have this is our website, our Twitter and Telegram, both of them. We also have a grants program live on the Builders Tribe website, which is buidl.so. You guys can look it up. There's a bunch of tracks over there. You can basically apply for any of those tracks. We have basically cash and credits to give out for people who want to build using Arcana. So yeah, more than happy to take any questions that you guys may have.
There are a lot, let me tell you, Mayur, there are a lot of questions. So I'll first pick a few basic questions that people have asked. Shivang Seth has asked, can you please explain the non-custodial concept? What is it?
Yeah, sure. So currently there are two main topics, right? So one is custodial. Custodial is your centralized exchange, like your Binance, WazirX, CoinSwitch, etc. This is basically where the platform, you log into a platform using standard Web2 means, username, password, or single sign-on, whatever it might be, and then the platform has your keys stored on some server, and you're basically trusting the platform that they will not misuse your private key to do transactions on your behalf and things like that. This is a very Web2 sort of model. Self-custody is the opposite of that, where you use your MetaMask, right? So you custody your keys, and this is typically the use case for decentralized exchanges, where your first thing is to go and connect your wallet, and usually your wallet is like, say, a MetaMask or a Phantom or whatever it may be. Now, the problem with custodial is straightforward. You basically have to trust the platform, right? And this is, and it's not decentralized. This problem with self-custody is that for a noob, or even for like someone crypto savvy, you have to manage your seed phrases. And the number one reason for people getting locked out of their accounts is the fact that they've lost their keys.
Yeah,
exactly. And there is absolutely no recourse, right? We all know this.
Correct. Yeah.
So
if they're lost, it's like a burnt wallet, they say, right?
Exactly. So non-custodial, which is actually it's another word for self-custody, but we are trying to kind of say that non-custodial is something in between. It is between custodial and self-custody, where you don't have the hassle of remembering seed phrases and things like that, but you compromise on security a little bit. But at the same time, it's not so much compromise where you're just simply trusting the platform, because the platform does not have access to your keys in our case, right? So it's basically a bunch of nodes and with very high probability, and due to game mechanics built in, there's a consensus that they have to reach, etc. It is with very high probability that they will not do something that is untoward, right? And the more decentralized we make it, the more secure it starts to become. And the idea is for us is that, while this is not ideal and self-custody should be the eventual goal, but this is how we get, majority of internet users to come adopt Web3 Dapps and evolve to self-custody.
The right answer is always in the middle, right? It's not on the far extremes. It's always in the middle.
Yeah. At Arcana, we truly believe it's not revolution, it's evolution. And we have to take users along with us and not simply say, go figure out wallets.
Correct.
Right? Because then you will not have mass adoption in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You'll probably have to wait 10, 15 years for that. So yeah, that's fundamentally it. That's the difference.
So Srinivas has asked, again, this is a very basic question, how to write a smart contract.
How to write a smart contract in general on a particular platform?
I think in general, no context has been given, but
I mean, if you want to write a smart contract, there's a lot of learning that has to happen before that. You have to pick a platform that you want to build on. Is it like the EVM ecosystem?
In Arcana.
Oh, you don't have to write any smart contracts in Arcana. I just showed you full integration. We deploy everything for you. Everything happens behind the scenes. For you as a developer, it will literally take you like a couple of minutes to configure. And then you basically a couple of minutes to integrate. Then you write your hooks that talk to our SDKs. That can take whatever amounts of time. But basically in a couple of hours, you're good to go. You have to write no smart contracts. You have to do none of that.
Understood. Ravina Bhasin has asked, what different services Arcana is providing currently in comparison to, say, Filecoin?
Filecoin is it's a storage primitive, right? It's just bare storage. It's like, if I had to compare it with something, then it is probably the cold storage that AWS offers. What is that thing called? I don't remember, Iceberg or something like that. But yeah, that's basically it. There's zero tooling around it. You just go buy space, you send it to whatever space you've done. We are basically a mechanism for you to be able to not only encrypt data and store it securely so that none of the nodes have access to it, but then also control access and say, I want only so-and-so people who meet such conditions to be able to access it. So that sort of tooling does not exist. And of course, we already spoken about the user onboarding part.
Got it. B. Prakash has asked, could you give me any use cases, or is this specifically for identity and access management? Any use cases specifically where Arcana can be used?
So let's take the example of a game. You want to create a Web3 game. You want to attract gamers. The gaming community is huge. Majority of gamers, when I say majority, the vast majority, 99% of gamers have no clue what a crypto wallet is. How do you onboard them if the first step is for them to connect wallet, right? So this is massive friction. I mean, you speak to any Web2 product guy, he will tell you that, if I take away focus from my user going through like the funnel of reaching my page and then diving into the app and doing the first thing, then I'm losing big time. And this is what every Dapp does today. It loses. So this is what we can do is basically, you can have like OAuth. In the future, we'll have custom OAuth, where if you just want username, password off of your server, you can do that. You want to do passwordless, whatever you want. So you can now cater to the entire spectrum of users. So this is the use case for OAuth. Otherwise, if you want to look at like the entire set of things that Arcana offers, just think of this, right? You can literally using few APIs build a far more secure, decentralized Dropbox today using Arcana, and literally write no smart contracts also. You just use only Arcana, and you can build a whole Dropbox. And that's, if you go to our website and kind of go to our documentation, we have a sample app, which is basically like lightweight Dropbox, right? And this is something that you can do And you as the user now can be rest assured that the platform, that the app does not have access to your data. Dropbox obviously has access to your data because it only encrypts data at rest. But before they encrypt it, they have access to it. They use their keys to encrypt your data so they can always check it out. So, I mean, like, look at Google Drive, right? Obviously, they're reading your data and mining it and things like that. So it's privacy preservation, security. And then, social use cases, token getting access to like a DAO. So you want only serious people to join a DAO and not bots and random people just looking to like make a quick buck. Then you can like do things like token getting, or more interesting use cases can always be developed. All of those sorts of
And
things
when
are
it comes
possible.
to building solutions on Web3, I think the sky is the limit. I mean, people come up with such unique solutions. Every
Pretty much.
hackathon I have been a part of, every hackathon I get
Yeah.
surprised myself that how innovative can people be. So I think the sky is the limit when it comes to innovation in Web3.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, we're just here to support that innovation. You shouldn't fall short of tools to be able to kind of build the kind of apps that you want to build. If you want to build something that is very Web 2 but more decentralized, you should be able to do it. Right now, it's very hard to kind of do
100%.
some of those things. So yeah.
100%. Rishikesh Wankar has asked, is there any model or base on which the Arcana assist the apps to provide security? Like, I think it's more about what kind of security layer do we have?
Yeah, so see, like basically on the auth side, it is secure given the fact that we have a distributed key generation setup where you have multiple nodes participating to generate a key and multiple nodes participating to actually store pieces of the key, right? And then you need to be able to authenticate, and then only are the pieces streamed down to the client that made the request in the first place, and that's when it's put back together. So nowhere in between, nowhere remotely are those keys accessible. On the storage side, it's everything is end-to-end encrypted by default unless you say otherwise. So every file that is getting uploaded is encrypted with a symmetric key on the client side, and when you share it with someone, that particular person, as long as they authenticate themselves and say that they are the right person, they can download the file, but it's an encrypted file, but they can also get the encryption key and decrypt the file, again happening on the client side. So full end-to-end encryption out of the box, right? You don't have to spend money, time, resources to be able to kind of do this from scratch.
Understood.
And then finally for access, basically we provide like it's a key management solution where we make sure that there are checks and balances in place to make sure that the right person is given the key and not the wrong person, and all of this is verifiable on the public Arcana blockchain.
Got it. So someone anonymous has asked, how can Arcana secure the Google's client ID and stuff for our DApp?
Yeah, I mean it's a client ID, right? So it's meant to be public, so that's really not the problem over there. So this is common practice, but otherwise, this configuration will be stored. Some of it is stored in a database, some of it is stored publicly on a smart contract. So we just make a call of what is data should be hidden away, what data should be shown publicly. I mean, this is pretty standard when you're setting up any sort of OAuth. You have to kind of go create your OAuth credentials from Google or Reddit or wherever, and you take the client key and you paste it over here.
Understood. I think we can take one more question. Prajwal Sansane has asked, sorry, if I'm mispronouncing the name. So this is, I think, a more general question. How is freelancing possible in blockchain for India? This is a more region-specific
Freelance
question.
I mean, there are tons of like freelancers in the space, and it feels like there's this whole movement and saying that the future of work is more like going to be freelance and being able to kind of work on multiple projects at the same time at the pace that you like and get paid out accordingly. This is like the future of what DAOs at various sort of protocols and projects want to be able to enable. So the future is bright. Currently, of course, freelancing itself is a very, very like lucrative sort of profession, but to be very honest, you have to be like really, really up your game to be to get like really, really good leads as a freelancer, because people, especially from India, unfortunately have a very bad rep when it comes to freelancing. And this is because of years and years of like issues that have happened with ad hoc freelancing teams or individuals and things like that. There's a little bit of overcommitment, I would say, on behalf of some of us people. I know because I also used to do that, and it's unfortunate. But if you can really up your game and really be like top 5 percentile of people in a particular very set space, like say even top 5-10 percentile of Solidity developers, you can be really, really wealthy, in my opinion.
Got it. Yeah, I think freelancing is also like the natural progression or follow-up to what happened after the pandemic. I think a lot of people have kind of reorganized in their heads how jobs work and how they can earn money without actually ever going to the office. So I think freelancing in general has a very good future in our country and across the world. So hopefully we'll see this revolution evolving in a much more sensible way. Guys, if you have any other questions, we can take in a few more questions. We have about 10 minutes left on our clock. If not, the socials for Arcana are on your screen. Arcana.network is also the website where you can read more about Arcana and also build your projects. Make sure you do register for the hackathon and build your projects choosing Arcana as one of your technology, because Arcana has sponsored tracks in the Build for Web3 hackathon. So make sure that you do register for the hackathon that way. Rishikesh also has a follow-up, I think. Is there any OSI model for Web3?
Yeah, good question. We were actually kind of sort of tackling this ourselves.
I think this question also popped up on our Discord server today about OSI models for Web3.
Yeah, I mean, you could say you could map it to like the typical Web2 sort of OSI model and say there's a communication layer, which, for example, the guys at EPNS are trying to build to some level, right? But it's not like a generic communication layer. Then there's obviously like the data layer, and then the data layer is in the Web3 space is a whole bunch of things, because now you have data sitting off chain, on chain. So where does that all fit in? Right, so it can get a little confusing, honestly. We've done our best to kind of like map that to ourselves, but how I like to look at it is basically you have compute, you have comms, and you have data, and then you could also go into, right now I don't think there's much happening by way of being able to analyze off-chain data. There's obviously very good tools to analyze on-chain data. So that that data link layer, as it's called in OSI or something like that, is still, I think, something that needs to be built. In general, like analytics for Dapps is, I think, like a big space. Like how do you build decentralized, privacy preserving, at least, analytics for Dapps? Because I think that's very important.
So I think we can take one last question, which is a general question again. Can you give us examples of dApps or games using Web3 technology, or any website where we can find these examples?
Examples for what?
Like examples of dApps or games built on Web3.
Oh, you should just go to the ecosystem pages of all the layer 1s and side chains and layer 2s. I mean, they all have ecosystem pages. Near has one, Solana has one. Polygon has one. I'm pretty sure Arbiter Optimism, they do have also. You should just go check those out. You'll know exactly who's building what, where, or where. Or otherwise, you could go to sites like Dapp Radar, State of the Dapps, I think, Dapp List, all of these places, and figure out, who's building what, under what sort of category, and all those sorts of things.
Got it. I think that is it. That's all the questions that we have for you, Mayur. Thank you so much for taking out your time and giving us this wonderful presentation and a hands-on on how to build projects on Arcana. I'm sure you guys have gained immense value on how to build projects using Arcana, and also understood what Arcana.network is capable of. With that, make sure that you join the Lumos Metaverse Discord server and register for the hackathon. We'll see you in the next workshop. But until then, stay safe, keep building, and make sure that you win prizes. Bye-bye all. Good night.
Bye-bye.